Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Andrea Wolfleff. I'm the Director of Operations here at the NCMC. Normally we do this Nantucket Tempo program as a Zoom webinar, but tonight we wanted to have a more informal conversation. So we wanted everyone to be able to participate and ask questions. So feel free to use the chat feature there and we'll answer your questions as we can. Let's see if a few more people to let in. No, we've been using Zoom now since March, and honestly, I think I learn something new every time I use it. Let's see who else is in the waiting room. Okay, so our host is Francisco Noya. He is the music director and conductor of the new Philharmonia in Newton, the music director of the Boston Civic Symphony, and the resident conductor of the Rhode Island Philharmonic Orchestra. He also serves on the advisory council here at the NCMC. He's a native of Venezuela. He began his career as conductor of the Youth Orchestra of Valencia, which is one of the original ensembles of El Sistema. I'm probably butchering that name. That's the internationally admired educational and performing program that promotes social development through music. For more information on Francisco or El Sistema, you can watch our very first Nantucket Tempo program, which was an interview with Francisco Noya, and that is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you, Francisco. I'm going to just turn this over to you now as host.
Okay, I'm in charge now. Are you sure you want me to be in charge?
I think there are people still coming in from the waiting room, so just want to get that, and let me figure out how to make you the host.
Good, no bark, you guys. Good dogs.
Okay, so Andrea, why don't we just for a few minutes, let's mute everybody.
Yeah, I'm changing you to the host. There we go. You should be able to do that now.
Okay, I am the host now. Okay, mute all. Excellent. All right, everybody's muted. That way you can make all the noise you want, and it's perfectly fine. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, wave. You know how to do that. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you have something that says reactions, and if you click there, you will be able to raise your hand, or you can have a question if you have a question in the chat. We're going to leave plenty of room at the end of the chat for, at the end of this conversation, for question and answers. So if you want to wait till then, that's fine. If there's something that you think is relevant and you want to address it right now, by all means. So hello, everybody. As Andrea mentioned already, I'm Francisco Noya, conductor, loving life in Nantucket. We moved here a year ago, and it's just terrific to be in this beautiful part of the world. And I'm very happy to be part of the Music Center, Community Music Center, and really looking forward to hearing from you after we finish, and see if you have any questions and any suggestions for all of this. So let's start. To begin with, I would like very much this to be a very informal chat conversation. I'm going to be sharing with you some things that in my experience as a musician, as a conductor, and I'm sure there will be reason for us to have a two-way conversation here. So picture the following. You walk into a concert hall, and there is an orchestra on stage, and the oboe plays the A, and out walks this person, man, woman, and he or she, they stand on the podium and they start waving their arms, and the sound just comes up like magic. Is it magic really? Not really. It is a basic way of communicating musical information. But we are all different. We're all different artists. We're all different people. We come to the podium. We come to the adventures of music making with different backgrounds, different trainings, different ideas as to what needs to happen. And this is some of the things I want to talk to you about today. Let me start by playing a couple of videos. I'm going to play for you. It's just a succession of conductors doing a piece that might sound familiar to most of you. So I will ask right away for your forgiveness for any kind of technical glitches that there might be. We're still very early in the 21st century and we're working out the technology. So forgive me for the discontinuities if there are any. First, let's watch this. As I mentioned before, there are 4 or 5 conductors here. They are all doing the exact same piece, the exact same amount of music, and you will see different ways of doing the same thing. All right, so let me share this. And can you see that in your screens? Wave or say something. You can see it. Okay, great. So here we go. Hopefully you can hear it too. Okay. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? I'm sure most of you have heard this before. That's Beethoven's Symphony number 5, the beginning of the first movement, which is, believe it or not, one of the trickiest things to do as a conductor. It's very difficult for the conductor, it's very difficult for the orchestra. And as you saw, we have 5 different conductors, all of them world-class conductors, all of them conducting world-class orchestras, and all of them doing something completely different. Is one of them wrong? Are they all wrong? Are they all doing it well? As a matter of fact, they are all doing it very well, and they are all doing a completely different thing. So you're wondering, what exactly is going on there? What is it exactly that the conductor is doing, and how does the conductor help if he or she helps the orchestra? Well, it's very simple, really very simple. All conductors do is, all that we do is we manage musical information with gestures. Let me repeat that. It sounds like something out of a managing book, doesn't it? We manage musical information with gestures. It's very simple. That really is all we do. I'll give you some ideas, I'll give you some examples, and then I might, if we have enough time, I'll give you a demonstration of something very simple that we can all do. Is it necessary to do all those kind of gestures? At a certain level, it is. We have to, as I said, communicate music information to a group of very accomplished musicians. We have, in the case of the orchestras we saw, anywhere between 65, 100 musicians on stage, and it's a very large space, a very large physical space, and we have to make sure that the last person in the last row can see what we're doing. All right, so there has to be a use of the space. But is it possible to do it with less movement? Of course it is. And I'll show you later a very funny video. Not funny, haha, but funny in the sense that it demonstrates what really is that a conductor does. Let's go back to the basic idea first. We manage musical information with gestures. Where does the music information come from? It comes from the score. The orchestral score that we use is actually the instructions that the composer gives us, and the composer is telling us exactly what it is that needs to happen for that music to materialize. Let's think for a second of a kind of abstract concept here, which is that what you just heard is not Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. What you heard is a recording of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The actual piece of music, the Symphony Number 5 by Beethoven, does not exist until we perform it. And when we stop performing it, it does not exist anymore. It's an ephemeral thing. All right, so if we grasp that idea, we are always creating this magnificent art, and we're creating it as a collaborative effort between the orchestra and ourselves. So in order to do that, we use these gestures that I was referring to before. So the musical information is coming from the score, directly from the composer. The gestures are very simple. We are using a very internationally accepted protocol of signals. We are conveying tempo, which means how fast or how slow the piece goes. We are conveying dynamics, which is how loud or how soft the piece is going to be played. We are conveying articulation, how short, how long the notes have to be played. I'm, of course, using a hyper simplification of what really goes on, because you can have many of those things going on at the same time. You will have some instruments playing loud, other instruments playing soft, some instruments playing short, some instruments playing long, all at the same time. And some instruments even playing in different tempo, to use the singular, if we're talking about some 21st century music. All right, but the basic concept is the same. Hand signals, tempo, articulations, and dynamic. Let's all try this if you would like to. I'm going to conduct a very simple 4/4 measure, which means that there are 4 beats in every measure, right? And you can count on your own, sitting at home. It doesn't matter if we're not together. This is just a basic demonstration. All right, so let's try it again. Let's try it. We're gonna count it 4, all right? And I'm gonna count 1 bar with you, and then you keep counting on your own. And are we ready? Let me pull back a little bit. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you counting? Come on, a little louder. All right, so that is just showing tempo. But at the same time that I'm showing tempo, I can show you dynamics. How loud, how soft. So I'm gonna start again at the same tempo, and I'm gonna start very soft. And then I want you to count, if you don't mind, I would like you to count in whatever dynamic you think I'm conducting. So count soft if you think I'm conducting something really soft, piano, and count loud if you think I'm conducting something, a piece of music that should be loud. All right, I will count the first bar, then you count on your own. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and go on, please.
2, 3, 4, 1.
Okay, so as you can see, I start soft, I get louder, and then come back down to piano or very soft. So we have seen two aspects of this, tempo and dynamics. But a conductor can also convey articulation. Should this note be short or long? So let me demonstrate a couple of bars of short, what we call staccato articulation, and then I'm going to demonstrate a couple of bars of legato articulation. And now I'm going to use the baton. Does it make a difference? Not at all. But you know, it makes you look good. Actually, there is a difference in the use of the baton or not, but let me address that in a minute. First, let's do articulations. Are we ready? I'm going to conduct 2 bars using staccato. All right, this is staccato, and then I'm going to do 2 bars using legato. As you can see, it's all in the same tempo, the same dynamic, but I'm using different articulations. It's short, this is long, all right, and then I can do piano staccato, and then crescendo, and louder, and then legato forte, and diminuendo, and so forth. All right, so that's basically it. That's the basic vocabulary. There's no other secret. There are no secrets, really. There is no other technique other than clarity of the beat pattern. All right, so we have addressed the issue of tempo, dynamics, and articulation. One other thing that we convey in our conducting is the meter in which a piece is written. It's a piece in 4 beats to a bar, 3 beats to a bar, 2 beats to a bar, and that's, again, a very simple protocol of communication. 4 has, like I said, 4 beats to a bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. It goes down, out, up, down, out. And 2 goes down, up, down, up, down, up. All right, so it's very simple. You have beat patterns that are recognized internationally. Wherever you go conducting, every orchestra can read what you're doing. Every orchestra can understand dynamics. Every orchestra can understand tempo and articulation. All right, so as you can see, anybody can be a conductor. There is no mystery. Actually, yes, there is a mystery. And there is a little aspect of magic, if you want to call it that way. And I don't necessarily mean magic in the sense of hocus pocus. I like the concept of magic that the great American writer Arthur C. Clarke used to talk about. He refers to magic, his idea of magic is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Let me say that again. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. What he means is, if we find this one of the smartest human beings that ever lived, say Isaac Newton, right? We go back in our time machine and we find Newton sitting under the apple tree, and we show him the iPhone. For us, it's an everyday object, simple. We all have an idea of how it works. But for Newton, there is no way in his universe that he can explain what that is. There is no explanation in his mind that can fit that object. So magic, indistinguishable from magic. Is it magic? Not really. But technologically, it's so advanced from his time that he doesn't have an explanation for it other than magic. In that sense, conducting, the actual physical action of conducting, is a little bit of magic, because we are not, most people in the audience are not really familiar with that technology that we're using. But as I showed to you, it's very simple means of communicating. Excuse me. The magic part of this comes from another aspect of what I mentioned before. We are conveying musical information using gestures. All right? And again, the musical information comes from the score. Let me go back one step here, and I want to show you that you can convey musical information using gestures, using very, very, very minimal gestures. Not everybody can do this. This is one of the great magicians of conducting, and I'm very happy to share this with you, because this is a great example of how to do things with a minimum of effort. Let me share this screen with you. So, where is he? Here he is. Okay. Can you see that man in the screen over there?
Yes.
That's Lenny. All right, let's watch what he does here. Watch his face. Okay, that looks like magic, doesn't it? He's barely moving. He's just twinkling of an eye over here, twist of the head over there. The majority of that work was done in rehearsal. So he can afford Lenny Bernstein, one of the greatest conductors that ever lived, one of the greatest musicians that ever lived, with one of the greatest orchestras ever, also the Vienna Philharmonic, a Haydn Symphony. A Haydn Symphony is particularly that movement. You start and it goes in the same tempo until the end. There's not really that much going on tempo-wise. There is a lot of intricacy in the music making. That's why it works better when you have a conductor. But tempo-wise, you start and you go. That's it. So he can afford to do this kind of thing. And basically, it's a sign of trust for the orchestra. I'm saying to the orchestra, I trust you guys. We're all in this together. You can do this. Let's do it. All right? Now, the majority of what he's doing there was already done in rehearsal. The rehearsal process is one of the most important things that we do. I will actually have to say it's perhaps the most important thing that we do, because that's how we can communicate to the orchestra. This is really what the composer wants. All right? This is what Haydn wants the audience to hear. We're working together to bring Haydn back to life. The great Romanian conductor, Sergiu Celibidache, he had a saying, he would say often, the rehearsal process is 1,000 no's looking for one yes. And yes, it can be a very demanding process. Rehearsals can be intellectually and physically very challenging, but they're also, when you're doing things right, it just feels so wonderful to be able to shape a piece of music according to what you understand a conductor needs to do. All right, so we have talked now about, well, I have talked, excuse me, I'm talking a lot, but I'll give you some chances to ask some questions in a few. We have talked about what happens in terms of the protocol of signals that we use, the communication that we use. I'm going to talk to you now for a little bit about the score, the music score. All right. So let me, before I talk to you about the score, I want to play for you a piece of music, and then we're going to the score to discuss the score that Ravel wrote. This is a piece by Maurice Ravel. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It doesn't matter really what it is. But just listen, enjoy the music. I'm not going to play the whole piece. I'm going to play just a couple of minutes just so that I can have the material to share with you about the score. Okay? So, oh, sorry. Let me share the screen with you here. And I hope you can see this in a second. Okay, there we go. Can you see that? Okay. And let me play. This is very soft. Well, hello. Oh, the wonders of internet. Okay, so that will give us enough time to share this. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Please stop. All right. Were you able to hear anything, or was that too soft for everybody? Yes? No? Yes? No?
Heard it.
Yes. Okay, great. So the piece that you heard before I start telling you about the piece, let me share the screen here so you can see the score, okay? Okay, come up. There we go. Okay, that is the first piece of the piece that you just heard Maestro Dudamel conduct with the Berlin Philharmonic. All right, the name of the piece is Petit Poucet by Maurice Ravel, and is based on a children's story. What I want to mention to you is, what is it that takes to be able to bring a piece of music to life? Not only you have to be able to read the notes, not only you have to be able to read the dynamics and the articulation, you have to really know what is this music about. You have to know about the life of the composer. You have to also have great imagination to translate these very esoteric notations on the page and turn them into sound. All right, let me point out a couple of things for you. The first thing I want to show to you is what I was talking to you about before, about meters. All right, so if you can see here, you can see these numbers 2 4 3 4 4 4. All right, that is because Ravel wants the music to begin in 1 meter. On the next bar it's going to be in 3 4. On the next bar it's going to be 4 beats to a bar. On the next bar it's going to be 5 beats to a bar. All right, there is a technical reason for that, because he wants the phrase to sound in that particular way. But there is also an extra musical reason for that, and I will share that with you in a second. The first sound that you hear is the strings, the first and second violins playing by themselves. And they're playing slow at this tempo, quarter note equals 66, which is about a little bit faster than 1 beat per second. But Ravel writes très modéré, which means very chilled. Chill, take your shoes off, put your feet up, relax. All right. He also writes that the violins have to play, if you can see that, with mutes. That's not, he doesn't want them to put fish on the violins. There's no sardines. It's sourdine, which means mutes. The mute dampens the sound of the string instrument. It makes the sound not only a little bit softer, but it changes the color. It sounds it's a bit sweeter and a bit distant. All right, so you have only first, second violins playing very soft in the distance. Then we have an oboe solo, as you can see here. And the oboe solo in that particular register, with the strings sounding underneath very softly, tends to sound lonely. And that, I hope that it was able to come through in the recording. I don't know if it was too soft for you, but when you hear this piece in a concert, that's the first sensation you have when the oboe first comes in. It sounds lonely. The reason why it sounds like that, and the reason why Ravel writes this way with those meter changes, is because this is a children's story. This is really the story of Tom Thumb. And the story goes that there is a poor family that lives in the woods. The parents cannot feed the children. They take them to the woods for them to get lost. And Tom Thumb was very smart, and he overheard their conversation, and he put some pebbles in his pocket. And when they got to the woods, him and his brothers, they were crying, and Tom says, "Don't worry, kids, I got this under control." And he had been leaving a trail of pebbles behind him, and that way they were able to make it back home. The second time the parents did this, took the kids back to the woods, dropped them off there, but Tom Thumb this time did not have a chance to put pebbles in his pocket. He only had a piece of bread, and he was leaving the breadcrumbs behind. They get to the middle of the woods, they're lost, the kids start crying again, and Tom says, "Don't worry again, I will take us back home, everything is going to be all right." And when he turns around, he notices that the birds had eaten the crumbs. There was no way for them to get back home, so they are lost in the woods. And that's exactly what Ravel writes here, right? What he writes here at the very beginning is they thought that they were going to be able to get back in the trail of breadcrumbs, and then he realized that the birds had eaten the breadcrumbs. Okie dokie. So this is what Ravel is doing here at the beginning. You see those meter changes? 2 and 3 and 4. The kids are looking around, trying to find the way. The violin's playing very soft. When you play with the mutes very soft at the tip of the bow, it sounds as if there is a bit of fog in the sound. Then you have the loneliness of the oboe coming along. That's what I mean by not only the notes, you also have to have the imagination to bring these things forward. Later on in the piece, you have these chirping sounds as if they are birds, right? If you know nothing about the piece, you think, oh, these little birds, and we of course we have the image of the Disney birds and they're all chirping happily, but you know now, because you know the piece of music, that those birds are the reason, actually the parents are the reason they're lost in the woods. But if it wasn't for the birds, they would have been able to find their way back. So as a conductor, you have to find a way for those birds to sound threatening. And that's where the imagination comes forth. All right, so we have now communicating information from the score through hand gestures to the orchestra, so the music can become alive to the audience. All right, that basically is the basic information that we are dealing with as conductors. And if you're wondering, what does it really feel to be on the podium when you're conducting a piece of music? Well, we have talked about the intellectual effort that goes into this. We have talked about the physical effort that goes into this. If you think that there isn't that much physical effort, I would recommend that you do the following. Put your hands out like this. You can do it right now if you would like, and move your hands up and down. Do that for 4 hours and talk to me at the end of the 4 hours, and you tell me if it sounds easy to you. All right? And yes, it can be 4 hours. If you're conducting a Beethoven symphony, it's about 35 minutes. If you're doing a Mahler symphony, it's about 90 minutes. If you are conducting an opera, La Bohème, it's 2.5 hours. But if you're doing Wagner, Parsifal, it's almost 6 hours. So there's a lot of physical and intellectual and emotional effort involved in this. Again, to ask the question again, what does it feel like when you're conducting an orchestra? Let me show you what it feels like. I think this is a very descriptive video of what it feels like to conduct Beethoven Symphony No. 5. Enjoy this. Okay, that's what it feels like to be on the podium. It is a fantastic feeling to be in the middle of a large symphony orchestra, helping the orchestra create all these sounds. There's a lot of work that goes into that, but it's a very rewarding, very, very, very difficult, but very rewarding profession. And that's all I've got. Now, do you have any questions?
Can you hear us?
Yes, now I can, yes.
Hi, it's Margot Young. I'm actually in McLean, Virginia, but I wanted
Hi.
to ask, I wanted to ask about your feelings about conductors as players and how important you think it is for conductors to have a range of experience with an oboe, a violin, a French horn, a clarinet, or do you think that's not something that's important?
That's a great question, and there are, of course, divided opinions about that. I had the fortune of, as part of my training, I played the cello for a bit. I didn't play. I played a couple of gigs professionally, but I was not a member of the orchestra. But I have a good feeling of what it is like to play a string instrument. I know what it feels like to play the violin. The viola is not worth it. Just kidding, just kidding. I think that there is something very important about having a sense of the physicality of playing an instrument, right? So again, when I was a student, I made an effort. I would ask my friends, you know, can I play the oboe for a little bit? Can I play the French horn for a bit? I took lessons in different instruments. So I did not intend to become a trumpet player or a horn player, but I wanted to have a sense of what it's like to play. Another thing that I did a lot, and I know many of my colleagues do this as well, but I love doing it, is when I was in school, I would sit in different sections of the orchestra, right? So I was studying a piece with my teacher, and he was conducting the piece, but I would be sitting, one time I would sit with the second violins, another time I would sit with the trombones, I would stand next to the double basses. So I had the sense of what is it that each section of the orchestra hears where they're sitting. So I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but I believe that one has to know, not necessarily how to play the instrument. We're never going to be able to play at the level of virtuosity that is required to play in a symphony orchestra, but we have to be able to provide some solutions, right? Don't breathe here, play shorter notes there, that kind of solutions.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions?
Yes,
Hi.
Scott. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. Ann Scott with the Nantucket Athenaeum, and I'm just
Hi, Ann.
wondering, hi, how important is the musical relationship or rapport that you develop with the musicians? Does it have any impact?
Yes, it does, absolutely. And this is something that we have to keep in mind all the time. When you stand on the podium and you're rehearsing with an orchestra, you are not conducting violins and oboes and trumpets. You're conducting people playing violins and oboes and trumpets. And you have to always remember that. You have to understand that that person is sounding a little bit off today. You don't know what's going on in their lives. Maybe they had a hard time finding a parking spot. Maybe their parents are sick. Maybe they couldn't find a babysitter and they're worried about the kids. It's a human enterprise. So for me, that's a very important thing. It's human. Music making is a very human endeavor, and I will never allow myself to forget it. I don't need to remind myself. To me, it's just the way it is, you know?
Thank you.
So yeah,
It's been really fascinating.
that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah.
Francisco.
Yes, dear. Who's that? Oh, Bernie, how are you?
So can you think of a piece that you have found difficult to imagine, to use your words, but not so difficult for us to play? So more difficult for you.
Oh, there's all kinds of things. Let me give you the. I'm gonna answer that question in a roundabout way. All right. Opera. Opera is the most difficult thing there is to do, because anything that can go wrong will. It's not that it might. It will. Singers will jump bars. They will forget lines. The orchestra will not come in here, or they play too loud or too soft. And you have to be prepared for anything. All right. But there is a certain way of writing that makes it either more difficult or easier for you. And the composer I have in mind is Puccini. The early operas of Puccini are easier to play, but way harder to conduct. The later operas of Puccini are much more difficult to play, but much easier to conduct, because Puccini learned how to write, right? So that he could get all of those effects. So I don't know if I'm answering the question the way you wanted, but yes, there are different layers of difficulty that way. In general, I mean, I love conducting opera. We don't do enough of it here in the US, unfortunately. I don't have the chance to do as often as I would like, but it's so fantastic. I love it.
So, Francisco,
Yes, Dr. Ward. Good to
yes,
see you.
Maestro, you have shown us the variations in how conductors perform in performances. But as I believe you mentioned, most of the real work of a conductor is in rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are the main differences among conductors in how they approach rehearsals?
There's like every conductor has it's a different universe in that regards. It's great that you asked that question. I'm in the middle of reading a wonderful book. It's called Conversations about Music. And it's a series of conversations with the great late conductor Wilhelm Furtwängler, who was conductor in Berlin in the 1930s through the 1950s. And one of the things he says is that you should not over rehearse an orchestra. You have to leave something for the performance, and that's something that in conversations with colleagues, you have those school of thoughts. I have some colleagues that want absolutely every T crossed, every I dotted. They leave nothing a chance. And there are other conductors, and I have to put myself in that category, where I say, yes, I want to try to make the orchestra comfortable playing this piece, but there has to be something else that happens in the performance. And that something else is what cannot be explained, is the intangibles. That's what separates the craftsman from the artist. And I don't know whether I fall in this category or that one, but I feel very strongly that there's gotta be something. And I see a couple of people here that have played in orchestras with me before, and they will tell you, yeah, he's crazy. He will do something different. I don't necessarily do it on purpose. I don't want to throw the orchestra off, but there are moments where you just know this has to happen. There is another aspect of that. Let me mention it really briefly. And next time you go to a concert, pay attention to what happens in between the movements of a symphony, let's say, right? Herbert von Karajan, who you saw conduct the Fifth Symphony in the first excerpt I play, he used to say that you have to be able to feel the transition and energy from one movement to the next, right? So he would say, I don't decide when to begin the second movement. The first movement ends up here at this level of energy, and the second movement is going to start here at this level of energy. When we all get here, I will start. And by we all, he meant the orchestra, himself, and the audience. So he had to wait, and then he will go. What is it that he's waiting for? It's not measuring decibels. It's not measuring wave, pressures of wave. It's just not measured in any way that I can define physically. But you really have a sense of that. The other side of that coin is what Claudio Abbado, great Italian conductor. Most of the great conductors are dead. There's only very few of us great ones left. Just kidding. But Abbado had a very famous saying, and he said, you have to wait, because the most wonderful thing is the silence that follows the music. It's when that piece ends, and that moment, there's no price. That's the reason why you buy that expensive ticket, to experience that silence at the end of the piece of music. The music continues, the sound stops, but the music continues, right? So that the music never ends, actually. So we have to pay attention to it.
Hey,
Cool.
Francesco,
Yes. Hi, Bill.
this was terrific, really terrific. I
Thank you.
particularly enjoyed the tennis racket. But
You are a terrific tennis player too, so.
here's my question.
Uh-huh.
At what age did you decide to become a conductor, and what led you to choose this profession?
I think I must have been in my late teens or early 20s. I was playing in the orchestra of the youth orchestra in my city, in Valencia, where I was going to the conservatory, and my main instrument is piano. Was piano. I don't have the right to call myself a pianist anymore because I don't practice. But I was going to the conservatory studying piano and cello, and I was playing in the orchestra, playing cello in the orchestra. And one day the conductor of our orchestra had to go away for, I don't know, he had to go out of town. And he asked me whether I would take the rehearsal while he was away. And I did it, and my colleagues in the orchestra said, well, you seem to know what you're doing here. Why don't you continue? So, and then, at some point, a few months after that, the conductor moved to another city, and they appointed me to be the conductor of the orchestra. So it was basically by accident. At some point, the year after that, I think I realized I don't really know what I'm doing here. So I decided to come to the U.S. and I did my undergrad in composition, and I did my master's degree in conducting, and here we are. So, one thing I forgot to mention. At the same time that I was going to the conservatory and playing in the youth orchestra, I was also going to engineering school. I did half of the career of electrical engineering. I never finished. I don't regret it for a second, my decision of going 100% into music. And if I had to go back in time, I would do it again. I think it's a much more difficult profession than engineering. I think normally when you finish your degree in engineering, you have a very good chance of getting a job and working in your field. You might go to the best music school in the world, and there is no guarantee whatsoever, none, that you will ever find a job. I have been very fortunate that I've been able to work and still work as a musician. Who knows what's going to happen after COVID? Right now, for the first time in 30 years, I have nothing in my calendar. It's a very disturbing situation. We'll see how it resolves. In any case, sorry, Bill, I talked too much.
No, that's great.
But you know this.
Francisco.
Okay, where are we? Who's up? Marjorie. Yeah, Marjorie, please.
Okay. One of the things that I always loved to watch when I was watching Francisco conduct over the period of, 13 years, was it?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
Felt like that. Anyway, you had an amazing way of not only giving the students the technical information that they needed. I mean, that's coming from the score, that piece of paper that you have in front of you. Mm-hmm. But that you also had a way of building emotion in their playing, which I don't think, I mean, that's a gift. And watching those 5 conductors at the beginning of your presentation here, mm-hmm. It was very interesting. I don't know who the first conductor was.
Nicolas Hanoncourt.
But I mean, I saw no emotion coming from him.
And you noticed?
I don't know. It just was kind of like, is this really a conductor? So maybe you could talk a little bit about how important you think that your personal feelings about a piece and how you convey that to an orchestra.
Right. Okay, so first let me say a couple of things about Mr. Hanoncourt. He was, by all means, a fantastic world-class musician. And yes, there is emotion in there. He might not have been as apt as the other ones in terms of conveying the raw nature of the piece at that particular point, because that was filming a rehearsal. Okay, so when you're in a rehearsal, your balance of emotion and intellect is slightly different than when you're in the performance. I don't know if this makes sense. So I'm not trying to excuse him. He is who he is. What is it that makes one person more able to convey that than other? I guess it's the same thing that makes a Shakespearean actor better than the other, or more direct than the other. Let's not say better or worse. they're reading the same text, to be or not to be. What the hell, right? It's the same words, but one is able to give you something that the other one does at a different level or doesn't do it at all. That's a great mystery. I don't know what makes that happen. I wish I knew. Cool. This is cool.
Francisco, one question.
Yes. Who is this?
I know you were recovering. It's Woody. Woody K.
Woody, hey, there you are. How's your shoulder?
That's my question for you. Is you were recovering from Look at that, from rotator cuff surgery last winter.
Yes.
How did you conduct during?
How did I conduct? Very well. No, I actually, if I find it, I don't know where I have it, but next time I see you, I will show you a video of a rehearsal with the Boston Civic Symphony that I did. It's the last concert I did since before the lockdown with the Boston Civic. We had our concert Sunday, and on Monday they closed Jordan Hall, and Jordan Hall will not open until 2021. There is nothing is open in Boston. In any case, to answer your question, most of the rehearsing I did left hand only. And in the concert, I took the brace. Which brace do you have now? Are you still on a brace? No. Okay.
No, I'm off of the.
Did they give you the brace that restricted you from doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. So most of the rehearsing I did with that brace. So I could move my hands this way, but not this way. But the left hand was perfectly fine. I did ask my colleagues in the orchestras, is what I'm doing useful to you? I was ready to not conduct a concert if my information was not going to be good enough for them. But they all said, yeah, it's fine. We can understand what you're doing. So I have a video of the dress rehearsal where I'm doing only left hand, but the concert I did with both hands. But again, very careful, because you don't want to rip it apart. You know how it is. But I'm almost fully recovered. I say 90-something%. I'm playing tennis again. Yay! Bill, when we played the other day, was I serving already? Bill? Yes?
Yes, you were.
Okay, so yeah, I started serving like last week. I have no strength whatsoever, none. I have to build up. Woody, just so you know, I'm a decent swimmer. I used to play water polo when I was in college. And I went swimming for the first time 2 weeks ago, and I was able to do 15 strokes. That was it. I had to stop. But then last week, I'm already up to like 120. So it's building up. It takes time. When you get to be half my age, you will see as you get older. Yeah.
Well, and thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for being on Nantucket. It's great to have you here. It
is great to be here. I'm loving it. And I can only be thankful to Beth for taking us in this adventure. For those of you who do not know, my wife, Beth Hallis, she's the superintendent of schools here in Nantucket. And she is the reason why we moved here. And if you think that things are tough for all of us, imagine what it is like for the superintendents of schools nationwide that had to make this decision. What are we going to do with our children? We live in interesting times, as they say.
Francisco, I have a question about this. Is
Dr. Jusela.
Yes. About, especially in this time of COVID, where people, sports teams, they say, well, I don't really want to perform without an audience. So how much of what you do are you also performing for the audience and maybe even feeding off them? And so what's that relationship like? Because obviously the audience is concentrating on the conductor, even though you might look at all the other players, but the conductor is the centerpiece in some way. So how much does that influence what you do?
Yes, it does. It does affect really well. Kari, for those of you who don't know him, Kari Jusela is a terrific composer. I didn't mean to insult you, Kari. Sorry. A terrific composer. I love his music. I have had the pleasure of conducting a few of his pieces, and he's also a fantastic cello player. It's one of the most complete musicians I know, my dear colleague. And he also can play. Man, he's a mean tennis player. I think I took one set from you once. I think that was it, and I think it was an accident when we played in Newport. You probably remember that date. So going back to this, to the question. Yeah, the audience definitely influences what you do. You know that very well as a performer as well. I don't know what it's gonna feel like to go back when we go back, whether we're gonna have a large audience or no audience or just a few members in the audience. I have been in touch with some of my colleagues in Europe as you might know, they already are having concerts with very severe restrictions, X number of people in the building. And that includes musicians, the stage managers, the people with the lights and the audience. So they're very, very limited as to what they can do. And everybody tells me it's so great to be able to make music together again. So I think that we are going to just focus on the energy that we are making happen when we're playing, and it would be great to share it with an audience, but I don't know that we're going to be able to. There's nothing we can do about that. It's not up to us, I don't think. Did I answer your question, or did I ramble too much?
Sort of, but I was wondering how much of it, let's say, forget COVID, but when you are, audiences love you. They love to watch you. We know that. In Providence and the Boston, seeing you conduct the Boston Pops. And how much of that are you doing for them, and how much for the...
Yes, no. I have to admit that I'm very selfish in that regards. I am aiming to look like Gustavo in that piece that I played for you, but just I am not trying to do something to please the audience. My main objective is to make sure that I'm useful to the orchestra. As you know, I also teach conducting, and the first question that you ask yourself when you open a score is, what do they need from me? If you can answer that question, you're good, right? But you have to be honest. What do they need from me based on what the composer wrote, based on the needs of the orchestra? Every orchestra is a different thing. The strengths of this orchestra are not the same of the strengths of that orchestra. So we have to adapt to what we have in front of us. In regards to doing things for the audience, consciously I do not. My main focus is the orchestra. My second focus is, in a very remote second, conducting is a very physical thing for me. As you mentioned, you have seen me conduct many times. For me, it's a very physical thing. The day that I am not able to do it the way I like doing it, I will stop. I have no second thoughts about that. I have a very striking image of Eugene Ormandy, who was, as you know, the conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, one of the great conductors of the 20th century. And the only time I saw him conduct was in Tanglewood, and it must have been 1979 or 1980. At the very end of his career, he was already a very old man. And I joke with my friends saying the concert was Sunday afternoon, but I think he left the dressing room Thursday evening, because it took forever for him to cross the stage and get to the podium. I don't want to be that, because for me, conducting is such a physical pleasure. You do this and that sound comes out, that if I'm not able to do it, I'm not interested. And to make the parallel in the tennis world, I'm not interested in playing doubles. I love playing singles. Maybe I get to a point where I have no choice. I have to play doubles, but in any case. So did I get to the point, Kari? I'm sorry.
No, it sounds great. I love the Seiji Ozawa. He conducts with his hair.
Yes.
We don't have that luxury.
I do not. No. But I have to say something with Seiji. I had the pleasure of not only studying conducting with him in Tanglewood, but I had the pleasure of performing with him many times when I was a member of the Tanglewood Chorus. He has the most incredible conducting technique of anyone I have ever seen. you know exactly what to sing, when to start, how long, how short, when to stop. There's no question. You will even know when to stand up, because he will give you one bar and he will lift the chorus up, and then he will give you the cue: sing, stop, sit down. Everything from memory. The guy was unbelievable. So, and yes, he used his hair a lot.
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry.
Margot, please go ahead.
No, you bring up one of my favorite questions, which is there, I actually have two short questions.
Mhm.
Gustavo Dudamel and Leonard Bernstein could both conduct, say, Beethoven's Fifth.
Yep.
And with very, very different motions and eye contact and all that, and each get a fabulous result. That's their personality and all of that. But my real question is the difference between conducting a chorus and conducting an orchestra. You feel there's a difference?
You're asking me what is the difference?
Choral conduct. Do you feel
Yes.
a difference between choral conducting and orchestra conducting?
Absolutely. Big difference. All right, so where do I start? Choruses are always late and they're always flat. No, just kidding. There are issues of synchronicity and issues of intonation that you have to address when you're working with a chorus. When I say they're always late and they're always flat, they're not. You just have to keep in mind the issue of the distance and the issue of the concept of intonation, which are different. The chorus has a weapon that the orchestra will never have. The chorus has words.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give special attention to the way the chorus enunciates and how they can project those words above the orchestra, then you have... I love conducting choral orchestral pieces. I really, really, truly love it. And it helps a lot when you have had some experience as a singer, which I had the pleasure of having. And it also helps a lot when you know the languages. So I reasonably conversant in several languages. Spanish is my native language. English is okay. Italian and Portuguese I'm very comfortable with, and I speak enough French and German to get in trouble. But at the time of doing a rehearsal and addressing issues of words and meaning with choruses, I'm very comfortable in all of those. I will have a very difficult time conducting a piece in Russian, let's say. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And it's funny because one of the teachers I worked with in tango was Eric Leinsdorf, who had been music director of the Boston Symphony, in the 60s. And he said the same thing. He said that he was not comfortable conducting the Russian operatic repertoire because he could not get the language. And language is such a driving force in vocal music. It really, really drives it. And the great composers really understood how to write for the voice. Not how to make it easy, how to make the voice the instrument that they needed to use at that point. So yes, to answer your question, boy, that's a long-ass answer. Yes, it is different to conduct an orchestra than to conduct a chorus, and to conduct a chorus with an orchestra is different than to conduct a chorus by itself. And likewise, to conduct an orchestra with a chorus is different than conducting an orchestra by itself.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions? No. Okay.
Wait, Bill.
Well,
Bill has a question?
Bill had a question?
Yes. Thank you. Not only are you a great...
Oh, Bill, how are you?
Fine, fine. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Bill.
Not only are you a wonderful conductor of orchestral musicians, but you're also a leader of audiences. Could you comment on the role of the conductor in getting audiences to understand that we live in a time of great creative composers like Carl and great musicians, and your role in bringing them to the stage, both composers, new conductors, and new music, so that audiences can benefit from knowing something other than museum pieces?
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. I enjoy discovering new pieces. I love working with composers and being part of the creative effort. I just enjoy what I do. I'm a very lucky guy, really, really, really lucky. I live in a wonderful place, as those of you who are here in Nantucket right now know. It might be a little cloudy. Are we gonna get rain? Maybe. But it's a gorgeous part of the world. I love what I do for a living. I have wonderful colleagues, great friends. So I'm just lucky. You know, I cannot take credit for that. Anyways, Andrea, are you still there? Did we lose you?
Yes. Thank you so much, Francisco. This was amazing. I think, and I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. This has been a really fun experience putting together these Nantucket Tempo Talks, and I learn something every week now. It's fantastic. So thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for your great questions. I really enjoyed this.
Our next Nantucket Tempo is next Tuesday, and it will be Nathan Abbey from the North Bennett Street School in Boston is going to talk about how a violin is crafted by hand and why you use certain woods, how you restore something when the woods are no longer available, that sort of thing. So it should be fascinating to hear from the opposite, the other side about the instruments themselves. So please join us.
All right.
I would like to I just want to say one thing before we go. I have a feeling that the rest of you all know Francisco as a conductor of adults. Maybe hopefully correct. We know him as a conductor and teacher and mentor and role model of children, young musicians. And it's a pretty, I'm sure there's some differences there. Maybe that could have been a question, I guess, to ask. But I just want to tell the world, our son would not be the musician that he is today if it were not for people. Mainly Francisco. He was an amazing role model, an incredible example to young musicians. And I regret that the rest of you wouldn't have had that experience of watching him work with that age of musicians. That was magic.
Thank you. That's very kind. I just want the record to reflect that I have not paid Marjorie Ward a cent for her to say that. Did her on her own.
Well, after all the gallons of beer you
owe me a tray of brownies.
And brownies, yeah. It was
all right.
Nice
Okay. It's a great pleasure seeing you all. Thank you so much.